Chapter 16. Peter.
The smile on my face was genuine as I served my customers on Monday. I didn't know if they could tell the difference, but more people were drawn to me. Apparently, being scary, awkward, and unapproachable hurt my sales in the past. Who knew? "I need to ask you something," a guy with a short, blonde mohawk said in a low voice. I looked up to see that he was nervous. I wasn't sure if he was closer to my age or Brooke's, and since school would have already dismissed, it made it harder to tell. I assumed he was acting timid because it was me, so I automatically answered my most asked question. Yes, I caught these fresh today. No one ever read the sign or believed it, so I stopped putting it up. He shook his head swiftly, but the mohawk stayed perfectly still. It was unsettling. Hair was supposed to move. "My dad wanted me to ask you if you're planning on being at the meeting at City Hall tonight," he said. My head jerked back in surprise. Why would anyone ever think I would go to a meeting at City Hall? I never have before. He nodded as if this were common knowledge. "Yeah, but you seem like the kind of guy who knows how to hunt." "I do know how to hunt," I verified. "What are they trying to hunt?" "The wolf," he said. "The one that bit those men this past weekend?" I felt the blood drain from my face. The noises of the afternoon crowd suddenly felt distant, as if they were water in my ears. The boy misunderstood my fear of the situation. "You don't have to go," he said, "but my dad is trying to get as many people to go on the hunt as possible. So many are afraid of going into the woods. You know how it is. They think there are worse things than wolves out there." "When is the hunt?" I asked, swallowing my discomfort. He shrugged. "I think that's part of what the meeting is for." "Who's in charge?" I asked, packing up my cart. He looked at me with a bewildered expression. "My dad." I sighed and looked up, praying to Brooke's God for patience. "I have no idea who your dad is, man." His eyes bugged out even more. "Sheriff Pierce Williams? I'm Nash?" The police were in on it. Great. I groaned. "Okay, thanks. What time should I be there?" He looked at the time on his phone. "It should start in about 15 minutes. Do you need a ride? I wasn't planning on going, but I could drop you off there if you need me to." I grimaced, not wanting to get too familiar with the guy. "No." I realized he was still standing there awkwardly, so I added, "Thanks, though." He nodded and turned to leave. "Why did your dad tell you to ask me?" I wondered aloud to his back. I wasn't even sure if he would be able to hear me, but he turned around and answered. "Like I said, most of the people around here are afraid. You look like someone who isn't afraid of anything. Since you seem a little out of the loop here, my dad is incredibly selfish. He wants your help because it benefits him. He thought you could be an asset to his cause," he explained. "Why didn't he ask me himself?" I asked. He scoffed. "I'm sure he's afraid of you." I felt the left side of my mouth twitch into a grin. Nash grinned back and nodded. I respected him for doing what his dad was too afraid to do. I hid my cart in the brush near the trail to the river and walked into City Hall for the first time in my life. I almost felt like I was doing something wrong, like they would catch me and convict me of espionage, but no one treated me differently than they ever did. I saw a few of my regulars in the audience and dipped my head in respect to them as I passed. They mimicked me and smiled. Things were certainly getting weirder and weirder in Midnight Springs. I slid on the wooden bench with the least number of people on it as the man with the gavel at the front of the room called the audience to attention. His plaque read, "Mayor Mark Harrington." A hush fell over the room, and he cleared his throat to begin. "I would like to call this meeting to order," he said. "This special meeting is in reference to the wolf attack that occurred Friday night. We have two opposing views for a debate here on how we should handle the situation. A majority vote on the citizens present will determine our course of action. Sheriff Pierce Williams, you have the floor." The sheriff stood and stroked his mustache. "It seems obvious to me that we should hunt and kill the wolf in question for the crimes it committed against two of our citizens. Both were badly injured, and one is still in the hospital. Amber Stevens is here to comment on the extent of their injuries. She is a nurse in the emergency room at Midnight Springs Hospital." The nurse stood and frowned. There was a look of distaste in her eyes as she glanced at the sheriff, but she stated the facts of the case as she knew them. Victim number 1 experienced an animal bite to his right arm. Victim number 2 is still hospitalized as a huge portion of his leg was damaged when he was bit by the animal as well. I exhaled in disappointment. Some small part of me had hoped they were referring to a different attack, but it was definitely me. "Randy Adams and Robert Geller are drunk fools," another woman said as she stood. Due to HIPAA regulations, I cannot disclose the names of the victims, the nurse said, taking a seat. I wondered if anyone else saw her widen her eyes and nod her head slightly in agreement. The mayor looked at the new speaker and nodded his head to her. Mary Montgomery, you have the floor to speak your opposition. In all our lives, we have never heard of a wolf attack in Midnight Springs, she began. Why do you think it happened now? Because those men, and we all know who they were, wandered drunk into a place that they never should have been. We have no idea what the situation was with the wolf. For all we know, they could have provoked it. Besides Brooke, I had never felt the urge to hug anyone. Nevertheless, I wanted to hug this woman. She was as dark as night, many shades darker than Brooke, and large enough that her presence commanded the room. Many enraptured faces seemed like they agreed with her. She was the perfect person to voice my side of the issue. We cannot dismiss the crime of the wolf because of the previous crimes of the victims, the sheriff argued. You have to look at this objectively, Mary. What if it were your son? Logan isn't stupid enough to go wandering in the woods, she argued, putting her hands on her hips. The man sitting beside her, who I assumed was her husband, closed his eyes as if he wanted to disappear. It seemed like bringing her son into it was not the sheriff's best idea. And what if the wolf attacked Logan in your backyard? The sheriff challenged her. She looked at him as if he had two heads. I would shoot the wolf myself, Pierce. So you agree that we should shoot the wolf? He guessed incorrectly. She stomped her foot. No! The wolf was in its home, minding its own business. Sending people out there with guns because of the foolishness of those men is wrong and irresponsible. The wolf was defending his home just as I would if he were to attack someone on my property. Another woman in the crowd spoke up. Are you insinuating the victims attacked the wolf? Mary pursed her lips and squinted her eyes. Look, y'all, we can try to pretend like those victims were any anonymous, law-abiding citizen, but we know they weren't. HIPAA probably prevents Amber Stevens from revealing what all drugs were in their system at the time they were admitted, but we know they weren't clean. Everyone in this room knows that. I'm not saying they attacked the wolf. I'm saying that we shouldn't launch a hunt on the word of those men. What if it wasn't a wolf? What if it was a coyote, a bear, a mountain lion? All of those animals live in the woods as well. What if you killed the wrong animal, or even the wrong wolf? It's illogical to take such drastic action with so little information based on one isolated incident. It was a wolf, a man from behind me shouted. All heads turned, mine included, to see a man with a bandaged arm. My chest tightened, and I had to remind myself to remain calm. The last thing I needed was for the sheriff to pull his gun and shoot me here. The wolf attacked me and Randy. It nearly killed us, he yelled. His eyes were as wild as they were that night. I, like all the others in attendance, knew the man was on more than his prescribed painkillers. Try to calm yourself, Robert, and tell us what happened, the mayor said. I took long, deep breaths as he spun his lie. Randy and I were having burgers at the edge of town, he said. We had been to the bar and ordered them to go. The wolf came upon us and stole my burger, so we chased it into the woods. After it lured us far enough, it turned back on us and attacked us. You chased a wolf because it stole your hamburger? Mary asked. Her voice conveyed how doubtful this was. There you go, Mary, the sheriff said. The wolf ventured out of the woods. It was in our territory. Can anyone verify that you even ordered a burger on Friday night? Mary challenged him. Yes, he did, a man spoke up, raising his hand. I served him. You may hate me, but I'm telling the truth, he said, raising his injured arm that I wished I would have torn off. I had promised not to kill him, but the man had obviously not suffered enough. I wished I could speak up, but I couldn't very well say that I knew a different story because I was the wolf. No one else was there besides. Was there anyone else there? I asked, surprised by the sound of my voice. Everyone else was equally astonished and looked at me wide-eyed. At the bar? Of course there were, Robert said. What kind of ridiculous question is that? Who are you, anyway? No, in the woods, I clarified. Who all was there when you were attacked? It was only me and Randy, he said. We both got bit by that rabid animal. It did not have rabies, the nurse piped up. He's just using that as an expression, and it's not factual. No one else? I asked again. He squinted his eyes. No. Not even a teenage girl? I asked. If fire could have shot out of my eyes, he would have been burnt to a crisp. His nostrils flared as he took me in as if he were debating fighting me right then and there. No. Why would you ask that, son? The mayor asked me. Please stand and state your name. My name is Peter Crane, I said. If the monster was going to stand there and lie, I had no qualms about doing it too. I sell fish in the farmer's market. On Friday night, I saw both men in question follow a girl into the woods, not a wolf. The crowd erupted in murmurs and gasps. Do you know the name of the girl? The mayor asked. I froze. Could I tell them it was Brooke? Would that betray her trust? I'm not sure. I might be able to point her out if I saw her, but no, I can't tell you her name, I replied. I would have to ask her first. If she didn't plan on speaking out, I had to respect that. But I wanted justice, too. It was a hard line to walk without knowing where she stood on it. Robert, were either of your daughters there with you? The sheriff asked, trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. My stomach turned. They both had daughters, presumably teenage daughters. I held back a snarl as my body shook, lowering myself back down to the bench. No longer was I worried about making sure they didn't hunt me. They needed to pray I wouldn't hunt them. No, they were not, the man said. No one was there besides me and Randy. We followed the wolf into the woods after it stole my wallet. The wolf stole your wallet? Mary asked. She was still standing. He nodded in confirmation. Yes, how many times do I have to tell you? Mr. Geller, you said previously that the wolf stole your hamburger, the mayor said with his eyebrow raised. The man huffed. Whatever it was, I went in to get it back, and he attacked me. How did you get away? Mary asked. You said it nearly killed you, so how did you fight it? It doesn't sound as if Randy could have made a quick escape. The crowd started whispering again. It attacked us so we couldn't follow it, then it sprinted off again, he said. He went deeper into the woods, and we found our way to safety. Right, Mary said. Did it get away with your wallet? No, I got it back, he said, patting his backside. Are there teeth marks in it? She asked. Her tone was no longer serious as if she were questioning a criminal. She acted like a mother who caught a child in a lie. She basically was. This is enough, the sheriff interrupted. We are not in a courtroom trying to decide if the wolf is guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. We know the men were attacked. The question is, are we going to do something about it? Who will stand with me and go into the woods to put an end to this monster? He raised his hand high in the air. Robert raised his good arm. They were alone. Who votes that we should leave the wolf alone and abandon the idea of a hunt? The mayor asked. Several hands raised, mine included, but it didn't seem like half the room. The mayor looked around the room in confusion. Who votes that we should hunt the wolf? Over half of the room raised their hands. The hunt was on, but there was no one brave enough to man the guns. The crowd dispersed and I headed home, unsure if I did the right thing by bringing up the fact that a girl was in the woods. I hoped Brooke would want to expose the men and make them pay for their crime, regardless of whether or not someone ended up hunting me. As I ventured out into the woods to clean out my coolers and cart, a feeling of anxiety and guilt began gnawing at me. It was as if I were forgetting something important, but I was too worked up to grasp what it was.